I woke to the familiar hush of dawn, the soft glow of morning light slipping through the curtains. The air carried the quiet anticipation of my birthday, yet there was no urgency, no pressing excitement, just the gentle awareness of another year turning. Daniel was always the first to wake. He had a way of making the house feel alive even before I opened my eyes. The muffled sounds of him moving about, the occasional clatter of dishes, the low hum of the radio playing some classic tune he knew I loved. I turned onto my side, watching the soft flicker of light under the bedroom door. He was up to something. He always was on days like this. Birthdays, anniversaries. Daniel never let them pass unnoticed. Over the years, he had perfected the art of making me feel cherished in ways both grand and subtle. There had been weekends in the countryside, surprise candlelit dinners, and once, a handwritten letter for every hour of the day. He had a way of making love feel tangible, like something I could hold in my hands. But this year I sensed something different. A shift in the air, in the way he had been watching me these past few days, his gaze lingering as if he was waiting for something. The door creaked open, and before I could sit up, Daniel was there, carrying a tray. A perfect cup of coffee, a croissant, a small plate of fresh berries. His smile was warm as he leaned down, brushing his lips against my forehead. His kiss lingered, just a second too long, as if savoring the moment. "Happy birthday, Liv," he murmured, his voice still edged with sleep. I smiled against his touch, reaching up to cup his jaw, feeling the light stubble beneath my fingertips. "You didn't have to do all this." "Of course I did," he said, his lips quirking into that knowing smirk. "It's tradition." I sat up slowly, letting the sheet pull around my waist as he settled beside me. His arm brushed against mine, his warmth seeping into my skin. There was something in his eyes, an energy, a quiet amusement. He was holding onto a secret. I could feel it in the way his fingers drummed lightly against his thigh, the way he kept stealing glances at me over the rim of his coffee cup. "You're up to something," I mused, taking a sip of my coffee, the rich bitterness warming my throat. Daniel only chuckled, setting his own cup aside before shifting closer. His palm found my cheek, his touch warm and steady, his thumb tracing an absent-minded path along my jaw. "Maybe," he murmured, his voice lower now softer. And then, without another word, he kissed me. A real kiss, not the quick, distracted peck of busy mornings, not the absent-minded brush of lips in passing. This was slow, deliberate, a kiss that spoke of years together, of quiet devotion, of something unspoken but deeply felt. I sighed into it, letting my fingers slip into his hair, feeling the way he leaned into me, as if this moment, this kiss, was just as much a gift to him as it was to me. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine, his breath mingling with mine in the early morning quiet. "Happy birthday, my love," he whispered, and I knew, whatever he had planned, this moment alone was already enough. The morning unfolded in a soft haze of warmth and familiarity. Daniel lingered longer than usual, his touch grazing my arm as he helped clear the breakfast tray, his fingers brushing against mine when he handed me my coffee. Little things. Small moments. But I noticed them all. There was something different about him today. An energy. A quiet sort of anticipation just beneath the surface. He moved through the house with an ease that felt deliberate, calculated, as if he were carrying some unspoken secret. After my shower, I found him in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with that familiar smirk playing at the corner of his lips. His arms were crossed, his body relaxed, but his eyes held a knowing glint. I arched a brow, placing my coffee cup in the sink. "You're really enjoying yourself, aren't you?" His smirk deepened as he stepped closer, his fingers finding my waist, warm even through the fabric of my robe. "Enjoying what?" His voice was smooth, teasing. I gave him a playful glare, but he only leaned in, pressing a lingering kiss just below my ear, his breath warm against my skin. "It's your birthday, Liv," he murmured. "I'm allowed to enjoy spoiling you." I exhaled, rolling my eyes, but my heart betrayed me with its uneven rhythm. "You're up to something." "Maybe." He pulled back, just enough to meet my gaze. His hand slid to my lower back, his thumb drawing slow circles, his smile soft but unreadable. "Maybe I just want to keep you guessing." I studied him, narrowing my eyes. Over the years, I had learned that Daniel was many things: romantic, thoughtful, sometimes infuriatingly stubborn, but subtle. Not so much. He liked grand gestures, surprises that took my breath away. And today, I could feel something simmering just beneath the surface. The rest of the day passed in a blur of affectionate gestures and cryptic hints. A text from Daniel while he was out running errands. Looking forward to tonight. A bouquet of my favorite flowers arriving at the door. The note unsigned but unmistakably his. A sudden, out-of-nowhere kiss in the hallway, his hands cradling my face, his lips lingering in a way that made my stomach flutter. And each time I asked, he only grinned. Patience, birthday girl. By late afternoon, I had given up trying to guess. I dressed slowly, slipping into a simple but elegant black dress, the fabric hugging my curves just right. As I fastened my earrings, I glanced at my reflection. My eyes were bright with curiosity, my lips still tingling from Daniel's last kiss. Then the doorbell rang. I frowned slightly, glancing toward the bedroom door. I wasn't expecting anyone. A cab, maybe? A dinner reservation confirmation? But when I opened the door, I froze. Mark stood there, his hands tucked into his pockets, his gaze steady. Daniel's best friend. A close family friend. Someone who had always been there, on the edges of our lives. And yet something about his presence tonight felt different. His lips quirked in a small smile, but his eyes lingered on me just a beat too long. And as Daniel appeared behind me, his expression unreadable, I felt the first flicker of something unexpected in the air. Something I wasn't sure I was ready for. Mark's presence at the door sent a ripple through the evening, subtle yet undeniable. He stood there, framed by the golden hue of the setting sun, his dark eyes steady as they held mine. For a moment, I hesitated, the warmth from the house meeting the cool evening air between us, creating a strange contrast that mirrored the unease settling in my chest. Mark, I breathed, recovering from my brief pause. I forced a smile, stepping back instinctively to let him in. His expression shifted, softening with something unreadable. Happy birthday, Olivia, he murmured, his voice low, familiar. Before I could respond, I felt Daniel's presence behind me, warm, solid, grounding. His hand settled lightly at my waist, a casual touch, yet there was something about the way his fingers pressed gently into the fabric of my dress that made me acutely aware of him. Glad you could make it, Daniel said, his tone even, but I caught the flicker of something else in his voice. Mark stepped inside, his gaze briefly flicking to Daniel's hand resting on me before he nodded, offering Daniel a firm handshake. The moment stretched a second longer than necessary. A subtle exchange, a quiet tension that, for the first time, I couldn't quite place. I glanced between them, trying to decipher the silent conversation unfolding in their body language. It wasn't hostility, not exactly, but something unspoken hung between them, heavy in the air. The door clicked shut behind Mark, sealing us into the warmth of the house, and I let out a quiet breath, forcing myself to shake off the strange energy. This was Mark, Daniel's childhood friend, practically family. I was being ridiculous. You look beautiful, Liv, Mark said then, his voice softer, more personal. His gaze lingered just a moment too long, and suddenly, I wasn't sure if I was imagining things. Daniel's hand at my waist flexed almost imperceptibly. I swallowed, pushing down the flutter of unease in my chest. Thank you, I said lightly, brushing my hands over my dress as if smoothing invisible creases. I wasn't expecting you tonight, enough to make my pulse quicken for reasons I couldn't yet name. Everything about the scene was intimate, carefully curated, yet I still couldn't shake the strange energy that had settled between us since Mark arrived. Daniel handed me a glass first, his fingers grazing mine in an absent-minded touch, before passing the second to Mark. It was a small moment, barely noticeable, but I caught the way Mark's fingertips lingered against Daniel's for a fraction of a second too long. An unspoken exchange passed between them, something subtle yet weighted, just beneath the surface of familiarity. Mark took the seat beside me, close but not intrusive, though his presence was unmistakable. The faint scent of his cologne drifted toward me, something woody, dark, familiar. I had known Mark for years, and yet tonight he felt different, or maybe it was just the way I was noticing him now. Daniel remained standing for a moment, watching us both with a quiet sort of amusement. Then, Reaching behind the armchair, he pulled out a neatly wrapped box, the paper crisp beneath his fingers. A gift. A slow, expectant warmth spread through me as I sat up, placing my wine glass aside. But before I could take it, Mark reached into his coat pocket and retrieved a second, smaller package wrapped in deep black paper, placing it beside Daniel's on the coffee table. A second gift. I hesitated, my gaze flickering between them. The sight of both men, both gifts, stirred something in me I couldn't quite name. There was no rivalry in their expressions, no overt tension. Yet the moment felt deliberately constructed, like a game in which I was the only one unsure of the rules. The candles flickered, catching the silver edge of the black wrapping paper. Mark's fingers rested lightly on his knee, his posture relaxed, yet his presence was impossible to ignore. My hands moved instinctively to Daniel's gift first, the weight of tradition guiding me. The wrapping peeled away easily, revealing a beautifully bound photo album. The deep burgundy leather felt smooth beneath my fingertips, the kind of craftsmanship that carried meaning in its weight. When I opened it, the first page greeted me with a photograph. Daniel and me, years ago, caught mid-laughter in the golden light of some long-forgotten afternoon. The next page was filled with photos I hadn't seen in years. Snapshots from college, from trips, from ordinary moments now preserved in careful ink. And then, there they were, photos of the three of us. Mark, Daniel, me. The three of us in the sun-drenched haze of youth. The way Mark's arm rested casually across my shoulders. The way Daniel stood beside me, easy and certain. Nostalgia swept over me in waves, mingling with the weight of something more complex. Daniel shifted beside me, his warmth ever present. He reached for me, guiding my chin toward him with gentle fingers, and then his lips captured mine. His kiss was soft yet possessive, an unspoken reminder of all that we had built together. It wasn't hurried, nor was it fleeting. It was steady, full of the quiet devotion that had always been at the core of our love. When he pulled away, his breath lingered against my lips, and for a moment, I forgot the weight of everything else. But then, my gaze drifted to Mark's gift, still untouched. I reached for it, carefully slipping the ribbon free, the smooth paper falling away beneath my fingers. Inside, nestled against dark velvet, lay a delicate diamond bracelet, simple, refined, yet breathtaking in its quiet elegance. The candlelight caught the facets, making them gleam like stars against my wrist as I lifted it. The weight of it was heavier than expected. A strange hush settled over the room. Mark's eyes flickered toward the bracelet as I fastened it, his gaze steady, unreadable. The bracelet fit perfectly, too perfectly. It was not a rushed purchase or an afterthought. It had been chosen with care, with intent. Daniel's hand rested against my thigh, his touch grounding, but I felt the shift in his breathing, the faintest stiffening in his posture. The weight of both gifts, both gestures, pressed against my skin in different ways. I exhaled, my fingers brushing absently over the bracelet. And then, as if drawn by something I couldn't quite name, I turned toward Mark. His gaze didn't waver, dark and knowing, and in that moment, something between us unraveled. I leaned in. The kiss was slow at first, deliberate, unspoken questions melting into the warmth of our mouths meeting. Mark's hand found my wrist, his thumb brushing against the cool diamonds he had placed there only moments ago. The contrast between his warmth and the cold of the bracelet sent a shiver through me. For a breath, for a heartbeat, I was caught in something I couldn't define. Something dangerous, something intoxicating. And then, just as suddenly, I pulled away, my breath unsteady, my heart hammering. The air between us pulsed with something electric, something undeniable. And when I dared to glance at Daniel, I found his gaze already on me, steady, knowing, unreadable. Nothing had been said, but everything had changed. The weight of the bracelet against my wrist felt decadent, cool diamonds pressing into my skin, leaving an imprint of something I couldn't quite name. The room was still, the candlelight flickering against the walls, the soft murmur of jazz continuing in the background, unbothered by the moment that had just unfolded. Daniel didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he gave no indication. He only leaned back against the couch, sipping his wine with an easy contentment, watching me with the quiet satisfaction of a man who knew he had done well. His gift, the photo album, rested beside me, its presence warm with memory and familiarity. But it was the bracelet I kept touching absently, my fingertips grazing over its delicate stones, as if testing the reality of it. Mark said nothing either. He simply sat beside me, his posture relaxed, one arm draped over the back of the couch, close but not imposing. The scent of his cologne still lingered faintly from when our lips had met, but the moment itself had already melted into the fabric of the evening, tucked away like a secret. I let out a slow breath, leaning into Daniel's warmth. The album, the bracelet, both gifts were beautiful, thoughtful, chosen with intention. Yet they couldn't have been more different. One was a piece of our history, a tangible thread tying us to the life we had built together. The other was something else, a gesture that felt loaded in a way I wasn't ready to analyze. Lifting my wrist to the light, I watched the diamonds catch the glow of the candles. It was exquisite. Mark had chosen it with care, not just as a friend, not just as someone who had known me for years, but as someone who saw me. And I liked that. The evening unfolded easily after that, any lingering tension dissolving into the warmth of nostalgia. We ate, we drank, and we laughed, really laughed, the kind that made my stomach ache and my eyes crinkle at the corners. Mark recounted stories from our college days, ones Daniel had forgotten but I hadn't, and for a while, everything felt effortless again. Still, there were things I couldn't unfeel, like the way Mark's hand rested lightly against the back of my chair, barely touching me, but they're all the same. Like the way Daniel's knee pressed against mine from the other side, his touch familiar, grounding, effortless. Like the way I couldn't stop glancing at the bracelet, my fingers ghosting over the stones as if they held some unspoken truth I wasn't ready to acknowledge. The night stretched on, and with it, a quiet awareness settled in my bones. This birthday was unlike any other, and I had a feeling I would remember it for a long, long time. Mark had always been the storyteller, weaving moments from our youth into something cinematic, embellished maybe, but only just enough to make them shimmer with nostalgia. He spoke of the reckless spontaneity of our college years, the road trips with no destination, the nights that bled into mornings. He told stories about Daniel, too, his stubborn streak, his insatiable need to plan everything, the way he had always been the one keeping us from completely unraveling. Daniel listened with amusement, shaking his head at the memories Mark unearthed, his hand resting absently against my knee. I smiled at the easy rhythm between them, the way they fell back into their old dynamic as if no time had passed. But I also noticed the other things. The way Mark's fingers trailed the rim of his glass as he spoke, his eyes flicking toward me with an almost imperceptible softness. The way Daniel, though relaxed, seemed subtly attuned to my every movement. The brush of my hair over my shoulder, the absent-minded way I played with the bracelet still glinting on my wrist. There was no tension, no overt shift in the air, and yet, something quiet and unspoken wove itself between us, settling beneath the surface of the conversation. At some point, I stood to get some air, stepping onto the balcony just beyond the living room. The night was cool, the city lights stretching out beneath me in a sea of quiet motion. I exhaled, the crisp air a welcome contrast to the warmth of the evening inside. I barely had a moment to myself before I heard the soft creak of the balcony door behind me. Mark. His presence filled the space beside me without a word, the weight of it something I felt rather than saw. He leaned against the railing, his gaze fixed on the skyline, the reflection of city lights flickering in his dark eyes. For a moment, we simply stood there, the silence between us carrying more than words ever could. Then his voice came, softer than before. Did you like the bracelet? The question was simple, but something about the way he asked it made my breath catch. I nodded, my fingers instinctively brushing against the delicate chain. I did like it. More than I should. More than I had admitted, even to myself. Mark turned his head slightly, his gaze finding mine in the dim light. There was something unreadable there, something I wasn't sure I was ready to name. And then, before I could overthink it, before I could make sense of what was happening, he moved closer. It wasn't hurried. It wasn't calculated. It was something else entirely, something inevitable, as if the night itself had drawn us into this moment. His lips brushed against mine. Just a whisper of contact, fleeting yet electric, a secret pressed into the stillness of the air around us. It wasn't deep, it wasn't desperate, but it was enough. Enough to send a shiver through me. Enough to make my fingers tighten against the railing. Enough to make me forget, for just a second, the man waiting for me inside. A sharp exhale escaped me as I pulled back, my heart hammering, my mind caught between 1,000 thoughts, none of them clear. But Mark only smiled, just slightly, a knowing curve of his lips, as if savoring the moment for what it was. And then, just as Daniel's voice called from inside, the moment slipped away, disappearing into the night as if it had never happened at all. But I knew better, because my lips still tingled with the memory of something I wasn't sure I could take back. Morning arrived in golden slivers, slipping through the curtains, casting soft patterns across the sheets. The scent of fresh coffee curled through the air, warm and inviting, carrying with it the quiet promise of a new day. I stretched beneath the covers, my body slowly waking, but my mind was already elsewhere. The memory of last night clung to me. The quiet hum of the city, the crisp coolness of the air, the weight of Mark's gaze before our lips met in that fleeting, stolen kiss. It had been nothing, and yet it hadn't. I reached for my phone without thinking, my fingers still drowsy with sleep, and the screen lit up with a single unread message. Mark. Couldn't stop thinking about last night. Let me steal you away for one more moment. Dinner tonight? Just us. No one has to know. A slow, careful breath filled my lungs. My fingers hovered over the screen, my heart a steady, measured rhythm. It was dangerous, reckless, and yet, tell me where. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. A reply came almost instantly. A restaurant. One we both knew. One that was discreet. I locked my phone and set it face down on the nightstand, as if that could bury the decision I had already made. From the kitchen, Daniel moved about easily, the soft clatter of plates and the low hum of a song playing somewhere in the background. The warmth of home, of certainty, wrapped around me, yet I still felt the cool weight of the bracelet on my wrist. A reminder, a confession, a silent thread pulling me toward something I wasn't sure I could control. But I didn't hesitate. Evening arrived too quickly. I left the house under the guise of meeting an old friend for drinks, keeping my voice light, casual, effortless. Daniel kissed my forehead as I slipped on my coat, his hands warm against my waist, his gaze easy, trusting. I told myself I wasn't lying. Not really. The restaurant was dimly lit, intimate in a way that made my pulse quicken. Mark was already there, seated at a table near the back, his expression unreadable until he saw me. Then, his lips curved just slightly, a knowing smile tugging at the edges. He stood as I approached, his fingers brushing lightly against my arm as I settled into the chair. No one has to know.